When night falls, the darkness starts to speak. Between each breath and the silence there are whispers no one was meant to hear. This is Night Whispers, where the dark has a story to tell. A few winters ago, after a painful divorce left my life in pieces, I craved silence more than anything else. My girlfriend, Christina, suggested we escape the city for a while, somewhere untouched, hidden beneath snow and stillness. That's how we found the lake house in upstate New York, modern yet warm, surrounded by endless woods, the kind of place where the world feels paused and every sound of falling snow seems to whisper, "Start over." The lake was nearly deserted, its few cabins standing silent under layers of snow-washed solitude. I found strangely comforting. The host had left clear instructions for everything, so we let ourselves in easily. But on the doorstep waited something unexpected, a small unmarked package with a handwritten note that read, "Enjoy your stay. Make sure to stay warm." It felt friendly at first glance, yet something about it lingered, though too deliberate, too personal. Inside the package was a small box of matches, an odd e-gift, but harmless enough, or so we thought. Christina laughed it off, joking that people upstate just had quirky manners. The days that followed were blissful, long, snowy hikes, steaming mugs by the fire, and a silence so pure it almost felt sacred. Outside, the snow kept falling soft and endless, wrapping the lake and woods in a calm that felt too perfect to last. The snowfall wasn't quite a blizzardono, harsh wind, no fogo, just a steady curtain of white that made everything look untouched, almost sacred, and the house itself felt like a dream. Our bedroom on the second floor had wide windows facing the lake so close it seemed we could touch the snow. The glass was thin enough to hear every delicate tap of falling flakes. Above us, a skylight framed the night sky, letting us drift to sleep beneath the quiet shimmer of winter. That night, the storm deepened. I woke past midnight to a faint, unnatural hum beneath the howl of snow and window mechanical, deliberate, out of place in such wilderness. For a moment I thought it was a dream, until the noise pulsed again, steady and cold. The window glowed pale from the blizzard outside. Careful not to wake Christina, I slipped out of bed and stepped toward the glass, drawn by a sound that didn't belong to nature. Through the frosted window, I spotted something I never expected, a lone snowmobile gliding slowly across the frozen lake. At first it seemed harmless. Locals use them all the time, but at that hour in such heavy snowfall it felt wrong. The figure on it moved with hesitation, testing the ice like they weren't sure it would hold. The storm blurred their outline, but I could tell they weren't just passing through. They had stopped, and they were looking straight toward our house. The snowmobile came to a full stop, and the driver climbed off, waving frantically as if in distress. I couldn't hear the words through the storm, but they were shouting Opliding for help. A chill crawled up my spine when I realized they were facing our house. How could they even know we were here? Still, instinct took over. I woke, Christina explained quickly, then threw on my coat and rushed outside. The cold bit through every layer, sharp as a blade. The moment I opened the door, the storm roared, and with it a woman's desperate cries. She was out on the ice, screaming that she'd lost her little boy in the blizzard, her voice breaking between panic and tears. Relief flashed in her tone when she saw me, as if salvation had come. My instincts kicked in. No child could survive that cold for long. I tightened my boots, grabbed a flashlight, and told Christina to stay inside as I headed toward the lake. As I neared her, more details emerged through the swirling snow. She wore a heavy fur coat, her hair tied in a tight braid, face pale but strangely composed. The ice beneath us was solid, not a single crack in sight, no chance a child could have fallen through. That eased my mind for a moment until she said her son had run away from home. The words hung in the air, wrong somehow. He'd expected a different story, as something that actually made sense. I was about to ask for details, maybe her son had fallen off the snowmobile, but even that sounded absurd. Who wouldn't notice their own child vanishing behind them? My thoughts tangled in the rush of adrenaline until her next words sliced through the storm. She asked almost casually, "Do you still have those matches, E?" For a heartbeat, I couldn't breathe. The way her lips curved into a smile told me everything. I knew exactly who she was. It hit me all at once. All the matches, the package, the note. She had been the one who left it, not our host. Before I could react, her hand darted into her coat and emerged with a gun gleaming in the snowlight. She demanded my wallet and phone, voice sharp and steady. I handed them over, frozen in place. Within seconds, she was gone back on the snowmobile, vanishing into the white storm. I turned and sprinted toward the house, shouting Christina's name. By the time I reached the house, Christina was already on the phone with the police. I locked every door, pacing the room, trembling with a mix of fear and fury. My eyes kept darting to the window, half expecting that snowmobile to return through the storm. The cops arrived an hour later, but by then the snow had erased every trace she left behind. Christina was shaken to tears. I was just angry. I'd come here searching for Pisio and found the opposite. I couldn't understand how she'd even gotten that snowmobile into the frozen lake. I expected the police to at least find it abandoned somewhere, but they didn't. Instead, they discovered an old boat ramp on the far side of the Lake O'Hare likely entry point. I pressed them to keep searching, but they only repeated what I already knew: the storm had buried everything. With Christina's help, I tried tracking my phone, but by then it was already off Liniagan like her. By the time my phone showed offline, I'd already given up hope. The Airbnb host refunded everything and sounded sincere, insisting he knew nothing about any welcome package. Still, something didn't add up. How could that woman have known we'd be there, and why plan such an elaborate setup for a simple robbery? The thought gnawed at me. Maybe the host was involved. I reported it to Airbnb, but their response was predictable, polite words, zero answers. Even now, none of it makes sense. Sometimes I still wonder if my ex had a hand in it, though I'll never know for sure. Maybe it was just a twisted stranger, maybe something darker. What haunts me most isn't what she took away, knowing that someone out there planned it, watched us, and enjoyed every terrified second of it. Our family's lake house in Northern California was the heart of every summer. 2 stories tall, with a small attic, it was where my sister and I spent countless childhood days pretending to camp beneath its dusty beams, our puppy curled beside us. Through the attic's tiny window, we'd watch the lake shimmer under the sun, laughing at the swimmers below, never imagining that one day that same house would make us afraid to look inside. Eventually, we outgrew the attic, and our little camping games faded into memory. When our grandparents passed away, their furniture filled the house, all large pieces downstairs and smaller keepsakes tucked away in the attic. My parents couldn't bear to part with any of it. Every box, every trinket carried their memory. Storing it all up there felt bittersweet, like sealing away a piece of our childhood alongside the past we loved too much to let go. It was comforting in a way, knowing those cherished relics of my grandparents still watched over us from above. That moment marked the quiet end of my childhood, and I'm sure my sister felt it too. As we grew older, life pulled us apart as schoolwork, the endless rhythm of adulthood. Family trips to the lake became rare, maybe a single week each year. My parents refused to rent it out, afraid strangers might break what memories had built. My parents feared that careless tenants might damage our grandparents' antiques, so the lake house sat empty most of the year, tended only by landscapers. Then a few years ago, they met an elderly veteran who restored antique furniture for a living. He seemed trustworthy enough, so they offered him a 1-year lease. He was small, disfigured, with white hair and a greasy beard that matched his gravelly, unsettling voice. Something about him just didn't feel right to me. Dad really took a liking to him, saying that none of us could understand what it meant to risk your life for your country. He believed the old man deserved a decent place to stay. We didn't have much of a say in his decision, but I couldn't shake the unease that crept over me whenever I thought about it. To make things worse, Daddy's lease meant we couldn't visit the lake house that summer, something that secretly upset all of us. My parents reasoned that the extra rent money would help cover our college costs, so my sister and I reluctantly accepted it. Though they trusted the old veteran to take care of the house, they still checked in through the landscapers from time to time, just to make sure he was safe and the place intact. It seemed like a fair balance, give him privacy while keeping peace of mind. Maybe a bit invasive, but he was getting an incredible deal anyway. For a while, everything seemed fine. The old man didn't mind the landscapers checking in, and Dad figured his rent was enough to cover upkeep. But that peace shattered when the maintenance crew called my mom one afternoon. Their voices were uneasy. They said they'd caught him sitting on the porch for hours, staring at the neighborhood kids by the lake. Then came darker hints, things they'd seen that made their stomachs turn. Momi's face went pale as she listened. The landscapers said it wasn't just the staring goat caught him doing other disturbing things they didn't even want to describe. My mom was furious, disgusted by the idea of a deformed old man lurking around her beloved lake house watching children play. For months she pleaded and argued with my dad, her voice growing sharper each time. I still remember one night vivid Lou Mom shouting that it was reckless, that he was dangerous, and that Dad was blind to it. Mom called it irresponsible to let a potential predator stay under our roof, and eventually Dad gave in. When the lease ended, he decided to ease the man out gently. Out of respect for his service, Dad lied, saying the house needed major repairs and would be without power or plumbing for months. The old man accepted it quietly and left. The rent hadn't it been much anyway. Mom told Dad to stop worrying and go. She was just relieved he was finally gone. Mom wanted him gone fast, so she even paid the landscapers extra to help pack his things. Honestly, I was relieved to it. Had always felt wrong that such a strange man had free access to our home. A year later, life felt normal again. My sister graduated college, and my parents decided to celebrate with a long overdue summer trip to the lake house. They just adopted a black lab named Bear, and for the first time in years we were excited to return. My sister hadn't met Bear yet, so she was beyond excited. By the time we finally reached the lake house, the sun was setting over the calm water. Since the pantry was empty, we decided to leave Bear inside and grab dinner in town. Before leaving, though, I noticed something off of Bear's ears were stiff, his eyes fixed on the attic stairs. He kept pacing restlessly. I brushed it off, thinking he was just tired from the trip. We hadn't been gone long just enough for dinner, but the moment we stepped inside, something was wrong. The air felt heavier charged. Then I saw Bear lying at the foot of the stairs, chest heaving, a smear of blood glistening beneath him. My sister's scream echoed through the hall. Mom grabbed her phone, calling for help, while Dad silently took a knife from the kitchen. My pulse thundered as we crept through the house, every shadow suddenly feeling alive. We searched room by room until Dad froze at the top of the stairs, raising a hand for me to stop. It took me a moment to see the attic hatch was slightly ajar, a faint beam of light spilling through the gap. My stomach dropped. Someone was up there. Fear rooted me to the floor, but Dad didn't hesitate. He grabbed the ladder and pulled himself up, knife in hand. I stayed below, paralyzed, listening to the creak of each step above me. I stood frozen, waiting for the sound of a struggle, but none came. Moments later, Dad climbed down, his face pale but composed. In a hushed voice, he told me it was our old tenant. My stomach twisted. Mom rushed upstairs, and when she heard, she erupted in fury, screaming that Dad had lost his mind. He wanted to let the man go, but it was too late. Mom had already called the police, and there was no undoing what came next. The police climbed up and brought the man down. He looked frail, sickly, oh hardly the monster we'd imagined. Daddy's eyes softened with pity, even as Mommy's burned with rage. They found our old house key in his pocket, proof he'd never given it back. That sent Mom over the edge. Dad had promised he'd change the locks. Bear survived, though badly wounded. Still, Dad refused to press charges, sparking one of the worst fights my parents ever had. It's been a year since that night, yet the memory still lingers like a stain. I'll never understand how Dad could forgive the man who hurt Bear, or how he could see kindness where there was none. The lake house, once my sanctuary, now feels cursed. What used to be home is just a ghost of my childhood. It all happened last summer when I was 20 and still thought nothing bad could touch me. My friend James came from the kind of wealth you only see in magazines. His dad, a high-profile government lawyer, owned houses scattered across the country. One of them sat beside a quiet, glassy lake surrounded by tall pines and silence. It was supposed to be a calm getaway, just two friends, and the water row, but the night that followed proved how wrong we were. James's family owned homes everywhere, even a few overseas, but the lake house was his favorite. The lake wasn't huge, but big enough that swimming across would be a serious challenge. Most of the surrounding houses were empty vacation spots, giving the place an eerie calm. With his parents rarely around, James had full run of the property and often invited friends to stay. That summer, though, it was just the two of us in the silence of the lake. There's something about a lake that makes you feel untouchable, like the world stops at the watery's edge. It's not like the beach, loud and crowded. It's private, still almost too perfect. The mansions circling the shoreline stood mostly dark and empty, vacation homes for people who rarely visited. It felt wasteful in a way, but for us, the emptiness was freedom. No neighbors, no noise, just the echo of our laughter across the water. James was known for throwing wild parties at the lake house, all no neighbors, no rules, no one to call the cops. But that night was different. It was just the two of us taking it easy. I'd recently broken up with my girlfriend of 3 years and needed the kind of silence only a friend could offer. We sat on the dock with a couple of beers when I noticed something strange, a flicker of light across the lake, faint but deliberate. I shifted my head, but the light didn't vanish. It flickered again and again, steady and deliberate. I pointed it out to James, and soon we were both staring, trying to make sense of it. Then we noticed the rhythm, 3 short flashes, 3 long, 3 short again. It wasn't random. James suddenly snapped his fingers. "Oh, that's Morse code," he said. I stared at him, half skeptical, half uneasy, wondering when he'd learned something like that. James admitted he didn't actually know Morse code, but he did know what E3 short, 3 long, 3 short meant. SOS. I laughed, called his bluff, and Googled it to prove him wrong. But he was right. The flashing continued, repeating the same desperate pattern for nearly a minute before cutting off abruptly. We just sat there, staring across the water. Maybe it was a prank, but deep down I wasn't so sure. There was always that small, uneasy chance that someone out there truly needed help. James wanted to call the cops right away, but I stopped him. We'd been drinking, and neither of us was old enough. I was already dealing with a DUI charge, and another run-in with the police could ruin me. Still, we couldn't shake the thought that it might be something serious, maybe even a kidnapping. The logic didn't add up, but fear had already taken hold. We guessed maybe someone had fallen or gotten hurt, but that didn't quite fit anyone with a phone would Dave called the cops by now. Still, we'd always been the reckless, curious type. If it turned out to be serious, we'd call later, we reasoned. Back inside, we grabbed a few of James's brothers. Switchblade Zoe was a weird kid, but they made us feel safer. James wanted to drive around the lake to investigate, confident he could handle it. I told James I wasn't comfortable driving, especially with my record. He joked about it and I laughed it off, but we both knew it wasn't worth the risk. So we went with the only other option, James's Dada's old kayak. At first we laughed as we paddled out, feeling like kids on an adventure. But the farther we drifted onto the lake, the quieter it got. The sun was sinking fast and the excitement began to feel more like dread. By the time we reached the middle of the lake, the sun had vanished behind the trees, leaving only faint glimmers from distant houses. It wasn't completely dark, but the silence made every ripple feel loud. As we drew closer, the house came into view, large but neglected. Half the dock had sunk beneath the water, rotting and broken. The flashing light was gone too, swallowed by the night, and somehow that felt even worse. The dock looked too unstable to use, so we pulled the kayak onto the shore instead, our boots crunching against the icy rocks. My pulse was racing, and from James's face I knew he felt it too. The light had come from the second-floor roof, that we were sure. James panicked, urging me to leave and call the cops, but I reminded him there was no service on the lake. To call for help, we'd have to paddle all the way back through the dark. I told James would need Wi-Fi to call anyone and reminded him we'd explored countless abandoned places before. This was no different, or so I said. He didn't like that reasoning, but went along anyway. Looking back, it was pure stupidity. Everyone I've told agrees. We avoided the front door. We felt like a trapeze and crept around the side instead. There, we found an unlocked window. Without a word, we slipped inside, swallowed by the cold, empty dark. The inside was completely bare, not just abandoned, but stripped clean like no one had ever lived there. No furniture, no dust, not even a scrap of trash. The emptiness itself felt wrong. We crept through each room, our footsteps echoing off the wooden floors, searching for the stairs. Every doorway led to more nothingness. Finally, we found the staircase and climbed slowly upward, following the memory of where that flickering window light had been. I pressed my ear to the door. Nothing. James nodded, so I pushed it open, my heart thudding. The room was empty except for one thing, an old film projector aimed directly at the window. My stomach turned as the realization hit. This was a setup. Someone had planted the light to lure us in. Before I could speak, I heard James's footsteps pounding behind me. He was already running. That was all I needed to follow. James didn't even try to be quiet too, just ran, and I followed without thinking. As we thundered down the stairs, a door slammed open behind us, followed by heavy, frantic footsteps. Someone was chasing us. We sprinted through the empty rooms toward the window we'd entered from. James dove out first, and I scrambled after him. As I pulled myself through, I heard those footsteps again, closer, pounding down the stairs. I didn't look back. I just ran. I spotted James near the lake's edge, shouting something I couldn't hear. Then I saw why our kayak was gone. Before I could react, a figure burst from the side of the house, sprinting toward us. He was huge, moving fast, his outline barely visible in the dark. panic surged. I pulled out my switchblade, hand shaking, but James didn't fight. We turned and dove straight into the freezing lake, clothes and all. Instinct took over, and I jumped in after him. The water was ice cold, stabbing at my skin, but fear drowned out the pain. We swam as fast as we could, chasing the distant glow of James's house lights that felt miles away. Every stroke burned the cold, gnawing deeper, but adrenaline kept us moving. When we finally dragged ourselves onto the dock, shaking uncontrollably, I thought I might pass out. We locked every door, called the police, and waited an hour that felt like forever. When the police finally arrived, they crossed the lake and searched the house. We waited shivering, watching their flashlights move through the dark. After what felt like forever, they came back with exactly what I'd feared anything. The place had been abandoned for years, no footprints, no gear, no signs of life. They scolded us for not calling earlier, and when James's parents found out, they were furious. Let's just say I was never invited back after that. After that night, James's parents threatened to sue the town and the police for doing nothing, but it didn't change what we'd seen or what we hadn't. I still don't know who was in that house or what would have happened if we hadn't run. Maybe it was a trap, maybe worse. Some nights I still dream of that flickering light across the lake, pulsing like a heartbeat to calling for help, or maybe calling for us. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if they had gone through with whatever they were planning. The thought alone chills me more than that lake ever did. Maybe we escaped something far worse than we realized. All I know is that when I close my eyes, I still see that window glowing, waiting for someone else to take the bait. Thank you for staying until the end. If the dark didn't scare you away, maybe you belong here. Subscribe to Night Whispers and let the darkness find you again next time.